What is going on, everyone? Soliday Holiday here, and today we are starting out a Zero to Hero Keystone Master challenge for Season 1 of The War Within. And our champion for this challenge is going to be Arden, a human Frost Death Knight. So this challenge is going to be a little different, right? Due to the fact that Season 2 is right around the corner, and from what everyone is seeing, it looks like and sounds like that Season 2 is going to be sometime in February, so we're on a bit of a time crunch. That being said, if you've not seen one of these challenges before, they are pretty simple in theory. We're going to be leveling our champion to level 80 and going to be pugging our way to Raider IO 2000. The rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I will not be trading any gold or anything else from other characters. I've removed this character from my Raider IO profile so that way no one can see my mains rating or anything like that. And I will not have any help from friends or guildmates. So I completed one of these challenges in Season 2 of Dragonflight, and I leveled Arden and a monk to level 70 in Dragonflight so that way I could do these challenges with them for the videos. But honestly, that didn't happen, and one of the reasons why is because towards the beginning of Season 3 of Dragonflight, my family added another member to the Soliday Holiday family, and that kind of takes priority. Plus, I also got a pretty big promotion at work, so with a whole lot of changes in life and family, making videos kind of got put on the back burner for a little while. But we're back at it, and my goal is to start releasing more videos and put a video out once a week or once every 2 weeks from here on out. So now that I got that kind of disclaimer out of the way, right, let's get to what you guys are actually here for, the good old World of Warcraft. So I leveled Arden as a Blood Death Knight. And, me being the classic dummy that I am, I thought you had to run the spec dual-wielding one-handed weapons. So I went to the auction house and I actually bought 2 horrible one-handed weapons that were pretty cheap. When I did this challenge back in Dragonflight, I actually did a Retribution Paladin. And one of the reasons I chose to do this class for this challenge is I'm very familiar with melee DPS. And honestly, I've been playing that role for most of my WoW career, right? I figured that due to the time crunch, because this is now the middle of January, so we got maybe a month to accomplish our goal, it would be great to learn a new class, but I already know the role, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal, right? And let me tell you, for whatever reason, my brain struggles to comprehend this Frost Death Knight rotation. Especially with this first video, I bounced back and forth between different talent trees and big abilities and whatnot to try to find something that works for my pea-sized brain. But, I'll get a little bit more into that when we start actually running the dungeons. But to start out this journey, I went ahead and picked up mining and jewel crafting. And personally, I've never been a huge profession guy. I know that they can offer you some great bonuses and gear and also money, but for whatever reason, I always just forget that they're there and go and do other things that I think that are more important at that time. And the perfect example of this is I picked up mining, right? But I was so focused on trying to level as quickly as I possibly could that I forgot to buy a pickaxe. Your boy didn't buy a pickaxe until close to the end of this video. I ran a freaking mythic dungeon before I even bought a thing that cost 1 gold, but that's just, my pea-sized brain, like I said earlier. My goal for leveling Arden as quickly as possible was to run some quests and some time walking at the same time. So while time walking, I was running the dungeons and I found that I was really struggling with the DK, rotation, and toolkit. So the premise of the Frost Death Knight is a sort of spender manager rotation kind of thing, right? You have your main abilities Frost Strike and Obliterate. Frost Strike spends your runic power, while Obliterate uses your runes and builds you more runic power. The more you use Obliterate, the more you can build up runic power and use Frost Strike, and so on and so forth. Then you also want to use Howling Blast whenever it procs. It seems super easy, but then you also have your big cooldowns. And what I did not know while leveling is how freaking important your cooldowns are to your damage. Such as Pillar of Frost, right? It is probably the most important ability for damage, and it's on a 45-second cooldown. Without this and your other cooldowns, the Death Knight is honestly not going to do any damage. And on a side note, while leveling, it took me until I was about level 78 to figure out the Death Strike is the healing ability for the Death Knight. Before that, I was wondering what the heck was I doing wrong? I even bought food because I could not figure out what was happening. I could not figure out what I needed to do to heal during these mobs. So after a whole lot of time of trying to figure out what's going on, how to play the class, right, we finally hit level 80. And that means it's time to knock out some of the mindless weeklies so that way we can gear up and get going on this challenge. I will say is one of the nice things about doing this challenge so late in the season is that there are some amazing ways to get some catch-up gear. We started out fighting the world boss, and we actually ended up getting the Seal of the Broken Mountain. This is a champion ring that has a 603 item level. After that, we headed to the Siren Isles, so that way I could get the other ring and also get the rest of the gear to catch up to where we needed to be. If you did not know, you can buy 584 item level gear from the Siren Isles, and it's pretty cheap. As of right now, we are still using the one-handed weapons that I bought from the auction house, and their item level is 357, so our first goal is to replace these. But then so we head to the Siren Isles, right? Whenever we talk to the person to head there, it did not complete the first quest for us. So we were stuck just sitting at the Siren Isles with nothing to do because we couldn't complete the first quest. And let me tell you, I tried so many different things. I tried abandoning the quest, logging in and out. I tried not using add-ons or anything to turn in the quest, and I was getting nothing, and your boy was getting mad. Eventually, after looking it up and finding nothing, I was honestly about to give up and just gear by doing dungeons and other things and completely ignore the Siren Isles. But then, I tried to apply to a time walking dungeon, and it wouldn't let me apply. That's when I realized my character was bugged. I was in a party by myself, no one else but me, but still in a party. So I left that party that only had me in it, and what do you know, I was able to complete the first quest to go to the Siren Isles. So hopefully for anybody watching, right, if you encounter something like this, you can think back and remember, hey, Solly Holly, he had the same kind of thing, what's going on? And you don't have to spend 3 hours trying to figure out what's going on. You can just leave the party by yourself, no big deal, right? So I skipped the quest line and I got my ring. I then went and killed enough rares and did enough quests to buy 2 Earthen Landlubbers axes. These were veteran axes and they were at 584 item level. So then I went ham on the Siren Isles trying to get as much flame blessed iron as I could so that way I could get full 584 item level. As I was going through, by just killing some mobs and bosses and whatnot, I was able to get the Earthen Landlubbers Sabatons that were 593 item level. I got a random trinket called the Cursed Pirate Skull that was a 587, and the Earthen Landlubbers Helm. I then saved up enough iron to buy the rest of the gear. After we bought the rest of the gear, I opened up the cache from the Siren Isle quest and I got the Champion 587 item level Landlubbers Mantle, and all this caused us to get to a total item level of 591. Then we started to push some more of the end game content. I tried out a new talent rotation that was the Rider of the Apocalypse talent tree. I tried this talent tree out and tried using this and seeing if it was something that I liked for the rest of the 5 time walking dungeons that we had to complete for the weekly. And I'll tell you what, is by the end of finishing this quest, I was done with WoD time walking. We used that all the way leveling, and then we used it to finish out the 5 quests, and I'll tell you what, I was done with it. I did not want to do anymore. But from the cache, we ended up getting 610 item level boots, and this was a huge upgrade for us. We then decided to go ham on some delves, because honestly, if you're looking for efficiency, delves are the best place to start out getting gear when you're low item level, and especially for your vault. And at this point, we were at Monday night, and I wanted to at least have something good in our vault for the next day. So we did a level 8 delve. We started out with the Bountiful Delve Earthen Crawl Mines. When we started this delve out, I was extremely excited to work through this because this was a place for me to practice the rotation with enemies that don't die almost immediately, right? I was really hoping to try and figure out this rotation, try to figure out the abilities a little bit more. So as we entered the delve and as we were going through it, at one point I did pull a little bit too many and I ended up dying. I easily could have saved myself with more cooldowns, but hey, it was kind of like a panic moment, right? But we ran it back and kept going. Our DPS was honestly horrible for this entire delve, and honestly, I'm surprised we made it through it. At this point, I need to do better with putting down Death and Decay so that way I can get the AoE obliterate damage, right? I'm also not using Remorseless Winter or Pillar of Frost enough times or even using it appropriately in the first place. So in the end, it took us about 35 minutes of running this delve, and it was painstakingly slow, but we did end up finishing it. From that beautiful, beautiful, bountiful chest, we ended up getting a champion chest piece that was a 19 item level upgrade for us. So then we went into our second delve, so that way we could get a 616 item level piece of gear for our vault the next day. And hey, this one only took us 38 minutes to complete. I will say is we were able to knock it out with no deaths, but good gosh, it took freaking forever. At the end of the delve, we ended up getting a 603 axe, but sadly it was a two-hander. And at this time, I knew you could run Frost with a two-handed weapon, but still, I really, really like the thought of running this spec as a dual wield. So even if you guys tell me I'm losing out on a little bit of DPS, I want to run this spec as a dual wielded. I want that. And I also, listen, I got a lot of cool transmogs for one-handed weapons, dang it. You know what I mean? I want to use those. I never get to use them. So after that, we got to log in the next day for our vault, and we got a hero trinket that was at item level 616. It was the Detachable Fang. Equipping this brought our item level up to 595, so then we went ham on our weeklies, killing the world boss and even doing more time walking. As we were going through our weeklies, I decided, you know what, enough's enough. I'm actually going to read the abilities. I'm going to do some research to figure out what I'm doing wrong, right? So I changed our talent tree back to Deathbringer and picked up the Breath of Cindergrosa ability. I also put a punishment on myself, and until I feel like I'm doing better, your boy is putting on the beginning Death Knight transmog, so I get to walk around looking like a noob, right? So after going through all of our abilities, figuring out what actually we need to start doing, I went ahead and knocked out a level 8 Delve, the Fungal Foley. And honestly, it went pretty well, except for getting absolutely annihilated by an exploding mushroom. We honestly finished it out. It wasn't that big of a deal. From the chest at the end of this delve, we got Pauldrons of the Hidden Stars, which was a 603 shoulder piece. This brought us up to 596 item level overall. We then opened up our caches from the weeklies. From the Siren Isle cache, we got a 597 item level neck. That was a 13 item level upgrade for us. From the Time Walking cache, we got the Royal Emblem of Nurabar. This was a 610 hero back piece that was a 26 item level upgrade for us. At this point, I wanted to upgrade some of our gear. So I upgraded our weapons to 606, I upgraded our wrist and hands to 597, and legs to 587. This put us at a 603 item level overall. And it was at this point that we got into our first mythic dungeon. We got into a group for a +2 Necrotic Wake, and this is the dungeon I finally felt like I was starting to get at. I finally felt like I was understanding what to do with this rotation and toolkit, even if I didn't do it 100% right? On the first pack of this dungeon, it was a big pack of mobs, but I was at the top of the damage meters for at least a little time, right? I hit over 1.2 million and I felt like the rotation was starting to make sense. I still have a lot to learn when it comes to this class, like actually hitting my abomination limb on big AoE pulls. But as we were killing mobs on the first boss, I was feeling good, feeling like I was hitting damage that I found at least acceptable. As we were fighting the boss, I can see now, right, editing Solid, can see that I need to hit my big cooldowns prior to hitting Pillar of Frost. So that way I can get those big in cooldowns out of the way, hit Pillar of Frost and start focusing on hitting my Obliterate and Frost Strike when Pillar is up. The boss was going really well, at least until the healer ended up dying. And I'll tell you what, I had one of those small panic moments, right? I could not remember where I put my battle res on my bar. And I'm pretty sure if you go back and watch my Retribution Paladin challenge, I did the same exact thing there. So I did not battle res him during the boss. But thankfully we were able to still kill the boss without the healer and move on. We did come close to a possible horrible wipe on the 2 Marauders that are after the first boss on the bridge. One of them began to cast their AoE fear and I accidentally kicked the wrong mob instead of kicking their fear. So that would, that's on me, right? The tank was pretty close to death and close to pulling some extra mobs, but thankfully the tank did not. As we continued on to the next boss, I do want to say to anyone watching at this point, right, is I appreciate your support. You still being here at this part of the video, the amount of feedback and assistance you guys provide me in these videos make me want to keep doing them. I just want to say a big old thank you to all of you that are still here. And also, if you want me to keep doing these challenges and doing these videos and more videos like this, give this video a like and maybe consider subscribing. It does help with the video, but the big thing is that the feedback and encouragement from you guys is what keeps me wanting to make these videos. So now that that's over with, right, we killed the second boss with no issue at all and continued on to the trash before the third boss. And I'll tell you what, whenever I run this dungeon, this trash always feels like a whole nother boss or a whole nother dungeon by themselves. But we were able to continue and kill them all with no issue. The third boss was a little rough. We had 2 of the creations out by the time we were finally able to hook the boss off the platform, and we were all hurting. And at one point, the boss dodged one of the hooks like he was dodging a wrench. And maybe someone can help answer this for me, and this is just a question that I have that I don't really know. If the boss is on the ground and gets hooked by a creation, does that keep him on the ground for more time, or will he go up to the platform no matter what? So if you could leave a comment and let me know that, because that's honestly something that I'm curious about. But we were able to kill this boss and move on. As we were fighting the last boss, I'm telling you, I think that I got hit by almost every single Frozen Bind ability. On the first Comet ability, the healer actually ended up dying. I was able to battle res him so we could continue on with the pull, but then I got hit by the second Frozen Bind ability, and I decided to check out if Anti-Magic Field would stop the damage from the Comet Storm. Thankfully, we were only on a +2 because I can tell you from personal experience, it very much does not. The healer then got Frozen Binds on him, and as I was watching him die, I almost died due to not really paying attention and just watching the healer die, right? So I battle resed the healer again, and we were able to finish the fight. We still had 5% on our enemies remaining, so we had to go back to the beginning and kill some mobs. But we ended up finishing the dungeon and adding 174 to our total rating, which put us at a crazy 174. We didn't get anything from the chest, but I'll tell you what, we got our first Mythic Plus under our belt. That's a huge deal, right? That's the first Mythic dungeon of this challenge. Our DPS was at 646,000 overall, which I didn't think was too horrible, but you know, there's always room for improvement. I then upgraded some more of our gear. I upgraded our waist and our legs to 597, but we sadly had to stop due to running out of Valor Stones. We then got into a +2 Ara Kara. Everything went great with this dungeon. We killed the first 3 mini bosses with little to no issues. Our DPS was going great, and honestly, the group was working really well together. We moved on to the first boss and only had one small hiccup when the healer ended up dying due to that raining web ability. But we were able to battle res them and keep moving. We did have to reset on the first trash across the bridge because the tank ended up pulling too many and the alarm scarab called the entire platform for us. And a little tip for anybody running Ara Kara. I have run into quite a few people that didn't know this, but if you're obviously a Mythic Plus guy, you will know this. But if you die in Ara Kara at the beginning of the dungeon, there is a docile flyer that you can click on that will fly you to the closest location from where you died. So that way you don't have to run all the way back. Moving on from the trash, we killed the second boss easy as cake. And this is where the dungeon went to hell. We made it to the last building and killed most of the trash so that we completed our enemy forces slaying. After killing the last mob that we needed for our enemy forces, the tank decided to go off to the side and go this route. Listen, I've run Ara Kara a whole lot, and I've never seen this route before. Honestly, I haven't. When you go to this area, it damages you, and I went there and I ended up actually dying. And our healer died right next to me. So the healer made it back and tried to make it again, but he ended up dying. So we both ran it back, and I was actually able to make it. I used anti-magic shell, but the healer died for the 3rd time trying to make it, and they just decided to leave. So we tried to fight the boss without a healer, and sadly the mage died at the first cosmic ability. And honestly, I didn't want to res him. I wanted to save my battle res for the tank in case he died. We ended up getting the boss to 31% before the tank died, and then I died almost directly afterwards. The tank then decided to leave, so this was the end of the dungeon. We were so close, yet so far. So I tried to find a group for probably close to an hour or so and was not able to get into one. So I decided to do my own +2 mist key, and your boy made a mistake. I got a little antsy, right? I'll accept fault in this, and I accepted a tank that I probably shouldn't have. I was waiting for people for what felt like forever, and a tank that was 579 item level applied. This was the first tank after 20 minutes of waiting, so I did in fact accept him. But the thing is I thought, hey, this tank has completed a +3 Dom before. Maybe he knows what he's doing, right? Well, with this disclaimer, I'm sure you can guess how the dungeon went. The tank decided to pull the first entire area, all 3 packs into one. So we wiped immediately. So after trying again, the tank pulled the next mobs, and we still had one of the villagers to kill. So we ended up wiping again. We then made it to the pack before the first boss, and that's when the tank died again. And he ended up DCing, and the group was a bust from there. So lesson learned, that one was on me. I should have been a little bit more patient, but I got a little antsy waiting. The next day, we were able to get into a +3 Dawnbreaker. I felt like we were doing pretty well on the first pull, and we even had over 1 million DPS. I mean, the other people in the group were doing more DPS, but that's not the point, right? Right? We then made it to the first boss with little to no issue. On the first boss, I actually forgot it was a boss and did not pop any of my big cooldowns, so my DPS was definitely subpar for this one. The druid did end up dying on the first boss, and I don't know if anybody else disagrees with me, but I've always found that whenever I actually use my battle res on a DPS, the healer or the tank end up dying shortly after. So I always try to hold back my battle res for the tank and the healer on bosses, especially for this reason. So give me your thoughts. Do you think I should have battle resed them, or do you think it's smart to save my battle res for a tank and a healer? From there on, we went and killed the mobs leading up to the mini bosses, and honestly, I'll tell you what, is I was starting to feel more confident. I was starting to feel more confident than I ever had before on the Death Knight, especially when it came to the rotation and how best to use the cooldowns. There's still room for improvement, but I was starting to feel better. We then killed the 3rd mini boss leading up to the 2nd boss, and we went into the town where we had to kill the dark casters before the 2nd boss. And this is my first time running this route, and let me tell you what, those dark casters have a whole lot of abilities you have to kick, and I was feeling a little nervous. We then pulled the 2nd boss as we were fighting the last pack of mobs. So while fighting that boss, all of the DPS got to above 2 million at one point. I will say that the Dark Orb portion of this fight was a little nerve-wracking, especially due to the tight spaces of the courtyard, but thankfully we were able to kill the boss and move on. The last boss of this dungeon is super easy. You just have to dodge the abilities, and so we were able to kill it pretty easy. And this added 195 to our total rating, which brought us up to 369. And I will say is that I very honestly wanted to keep going. I wanted to keep recording more dungeons, but I knew if I kept recording, then I'll tell you what, this video would take way too freaking long to edit. So we upgraded our trinket to 597, and I'm calling it for the week. So this is the end of this video. We are sitting at an item level of 605 and a mythic rating of 369. So thank you to everybody that is still here watching. I greatly appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.